Captain Jake Morrison stood at the bridge window of the human ship Starbound, watching the massive ring world of Nexus Prime grow larger in the viewscreen. After 30 years of proving themselves to the galaxy, humanity was finally being invited to join the Galactic Council. It was the moment every human had dreamed of since first contact with alien species 50 years ago. "Sir, we're receiving the standard greeting protocols from Nexus Prime Traffic Control," reported Lieutenant Lisa Grant from her communications station. Her voice carried the same excitement that Jake felt in his chest. This was history in the E.A.B. making. "Send our diplomatic credentials and request permission to dock at the council chambers," Jake ordered. Behind him, the small human delegation prepared for what they believed would be the most important day in human history. Ambassador Helen Carter checked her formal robes one final time, while the cultural attachés reviewed their presentation materials. The journey to this moment had been long and difficult. Humans had first encountered the Galactic Council through traders who visited the outer edges of human space. The Council claimed to represent over 200 species living in peace and cooperation across thousands of worlds. To join a species had to prove they could contribute to galactic civilization without causing conflict. For 3 decades, humans had worked tirelessly to meet the Council's requirements. They had shared their technology, opened their borders to alien visitors, and followed every rule the Council had given them. Human colonies had been established on dozens of worlds, always with Council oversight and approval. Every step had been watched, measured, and judged by alien observers. "Captain, I'm receiving some strange signals," Lisa said, her fingers dancing across her control panel. "There are encrypted transmissions going back and forth between the Council fleet positions. The encryption is different from their standard diplomatic codes." Jake frowned. In all their dealings with the Council, communications had always been open and transparent. The Council prided itself on having no secrets between member species. "Can you decode it?" "I'm trying, sir. The computer is working on it now." Lisa's brow furrowed as she concentrated on her screens. "Sir, this is odd. The transmission patterns suggest they're coordinating something military, not diplomatic." Before Jake could respond, the ship's artificial intelligence announced their arrival. "Now approaching Nexus Prime Docking Facility 7. Diplomatic party, please prepare for transfer." The Starbound was not a warship. It carried only a small security detail of 12 Marines led by Sergeant Alex Turner. The rest of the crew were diplomats, scientists, and cultural experts. Humanity had deliberately sent a peaceful delegation to show their good intentions. As they docked, Jake watched through the windows as hundreds of alien species moved through the station corridors. The Council was truly impressive, beings of every shape and size working together in apparent harmony. Tall, graceful Altarians with their silver skin walked alongside the massive, rock-like Grandi. Small, quick Zephyrians darted between larger species with practiced ease. "Captain," Lisa called urgently, "I've broken part of the encryption. Sir, you need to see this." Jake hurried to her station. On her screen, fragments of decoded text scrolled past. The words made his blood run cold. "Primary. Targets confirmed in Docking Bay 7. Elimination protocol to commence upon signal. No survivors. Complete sterilization required." "Lisa, are you certain this is accurate?" Jake's voice was steady, but his mind was racing. These weren't diplomatic communications. They were military orders. "Yes, sir. The computer confidence is 97%. "Captain, there are more fragments coming in. Something about the human threat. and before they can multiply further. Jake felt the world shift around him. Everything they had believed about the Council, about their place in the galaxy, about the peaceful future humanity was working toward, it was all a lie. The Council hadn't invited them here to welcome them as members. They had invited them here to kill them. "Get me Chief Engineer Kate Phillips," Jake ordered. "Emergency priority." Kate's voice came through the communicator immediately. "Yes, Captain?" "Kate, I need you to prepare an emergency transmission to Earth. Full power, all frequencies, and I need you to do it without the Council detecting it." "That's not going to be easy, sir. We're inside their station now. Their sensors will pick up any transmission we make." "Then find a way around their sensors. This is life or death, Kate. Not just for us, but for all of humanity." Meanwhile, the diplomatic party was preparing to leave the ship. Ambassador Carter straightened her formal robes and smiled at Jake. "Captain, this is the moment we've all been waiting for. In a few hours, humanity will officially join the galactic community." Jake looked at the woman who had dedicated her life to this moment. How could he tell her that it was all a trap? How could he explain that the species she admired and trusted were planning to murder every human in the delegation? "Ambassador, I need you to delay the ceremony. Tell them we're having technical difficulties with our presentation." "Captain, we can't delay this. The Council has scheduled this ceremony months in advance. Representatives from 200 species are waiting for us." "Please, just trust me. Give me 30 minutes. Before the ambassador could respond, Lisa spoke. Up again. "Captain, I'm getting more transmissions. They're talking about Earth. Something about secondary targets and colonial elimination." The full horror of the situation hit Jake like a physical blow. This wasn't just about killing the human delegation. The Council was planning to destroy humanity entirely. Every human colony, every outpost, every person who had ever trusted in the Council's peaceful intentions was marked for death. "Kate, what's the status on that transmission?" "Almost ready, Captain. I'm routing it through the station's own communication array. It'll look like routine traffic until it clears their sensor net." Jake made his decision. "Send this message. Council betrayed us. They're coming for Earth. Prepare for war. Send it to every human world, every ship, every outpost we have. Priority Alpha. Sending now, sir." As the transmission launched toward Earth and the human colonies, Jake realized that in the next few minutes, everything would change. Humanity was about to learn that the galaxy was not the peaceful place they had hoped to join. Instead, it was full of enemies who smiled while planning genocide. The Council had made one critical mistake. They assumed that because humans seemed peaceful and cooperative, they would be easy to eliminate. They had watched humanity for 30 years, but had never seen what humans were truly capable of when betrayed and threatened with extinction. Soon, they would learn. The Council chambers were even more magnificent than the humans had imagined. The massive dome stretched high above them, with seating for thousands of representatives from hundreds of worlds. Light filtered through crystal panels, casting rainbow patterns across the polished floor where the human delegation now stood. Chancellor Vexthul, the ancient Zephyrian leader of the Council, rose from his elevated platform. His thin, gray form commanded respect from every being in the chamber. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of millennia. "Today, we welcome a new species to our great community," the Chancellor began, his words translated instantly into every language. "Humanity has shown us their desire for peace and their ability to contribute to galactic civilization. Ambassador Carter stepped forward, her prepared speech ready. She had practiced these words 1,000 times, dreaming of this moment when humanity would finally be accepted as equals in the vast galaxy. But Captain Morrison had other concerns. He stood with Sergeant Turner and the small security detail at the edge of the chamber, his eyes scanning the walls and balconies. Lisa's decoded messages played in his mind like a warning bell. Somewhere in this beautiful chamber, death was waiting. Distinguished members of the Council, Ambassador Carter began, humanity is honored to accept your invitation to join this great alliance of worlds. We bring with us our knowledge, our resources, and our commitment to peace. The alien representatives applauded politely, but Jake noticed something wrong. Many of them weren't looking at the ambassador. Instead, they were checking small devices or glancing toward the upper levels of the chamber. It was as if they were waiting for something. Chancellor Vex Thule smiled, showing sharp teeth that suddenly looked less friendly than before. Humanity has indeed shown us much about their nature. They are unique among the species we have encountered. That word, unique, sent chills down Jake's spine. In the intercepted messages, the Council had used the same word when discussing the human threat. Their capacity for individual creativity combined with pack loyalty makes them... The Chancellor paused, his smile growing wider. Dangerous. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Ambassador Carter looked confused, glancing back at Jake with questions in her eyes. This wasn't how the ceremony was supposed to go. However, Chancellor Vexithul continued. The Council has a responsibility to protect the peace we have maintained for thousands of years. Sometimes that protection requires difficult decisions. Jake saw movement in the upper balconies. Dark shapes were positioning themselves at key points around the chamber. His military training kicked in, and he began counting exits and cover positions. Sergeant Turner, he whispered into his communicator, get ready to move. Something's about to happen. Turner, a veteran of several colonial conflicts, was already alert. He had noticed the same things Jake had. The wrong body language from the aliens, the positioning of what looked like security forces, and the way the main exits had been quietly blocked. Chancellor Vex Thule raised his hand, and the chamber fell, silent. The Council has decided that humanity cannot be allowed to join our community. Your species represents a threat to the order we have spent millennia building. Ambassador Carter stepped back in shock. I don't understand. We followed every requirement, met every standard you set for us. You have, the Chancellor agreed. But in doing so, you have shown us what you truly are. A species that learns too quickly, adapts too easily, and fights too cleverly. You are not like us. You cannot be controlled. The trap was sprung with devastating suddenness. Panels in the walls slid open, revealing plasma cannons that immediately began firing into the human delegation. At the same time, armed Krillian shock troops poured through hidden entrances, their weapons aimed at any human still standing. Jake threw himself toward Ambassador Carter, tackling her to the ground as plasma bolts scorched the air where she had been standing. Around them, the carefully planned diplomatic ceremony became a massacre. "Turner, get whoever you can to the escape pods," Jake shouted over the sound of weapons fire. Sergeant Turner was already moving, his 12 Marines forming, a defensive circle around the surviving diplomats. These weren't career soldiers. They were scientists, cultural experts, and negotiators. But they were also human, and when faced with extinction, They fought with a fury that surprised their attackers. Dr. Rodriguez, the delegation's chief scientist, grabbed a fallen Krillian weapon and began returning fire. Ambassador Carter, despite her shock, was helping wounded colleagues toward the nearest exit. The humans weren't going to die quietly. Meanwhile, in orbit around Nexus Prime, the Council fleet was moving against the human ships, the Starbound, and its small escort faced overwhelming odds. Hundreds of alien warships against a handful of lightly armed human vessels. Chief Engineer Kate Phillips had completed the emergency transmission to Earth, but she knew it might be too late. The nearest human military ships were weeks away, and the colonies were spread too thin to mount an effective defense against a coordinated Council attack. "Captain," she called over the ship's intercom. "Council ships are powering weapons. They're moving to attack positions." Jake and the survivors had fought their way to a maintenance corridor, but they were trapped. Krillian troops blocked every route back to their ships, and more Council forces were converging on their position. "There," Turner pointed to a service hatch. "Emergency shuttles. If we can reach them, we might be able to get out of here." It was a desperate plan, but it was their only chance. The surviving humans fought through corridors filled with alien troops, using every trick Jake and Turner could remember from their military training. They moved like ghosts, striking fast and disappearing before the enemy could respond. Behind them, Chancellor Vexathul's voice echoed through the station's communication system. "Let this be a lesson to any species that thinks to challenge the Council's authority. Humanity chose to be our enemy. Now they will face the consequences." But as the humans reached the shuttle bay, Jake realized something the Chancellor didn't know. The emergency transmission to Earth had included more than just a warning. It had also included every piece of intelligence Lisa had gathered about Council fleet positions, technology, and tactics. Humanity was about to learn that they had been betrayed by the species they trusted most. But the Council was about to learn something far more dangerous: that humans were most lethal when they had nothing left to lose. As their stolen shuttle launched from Nexus Prime, carrying proof of the Council's treachery and survivors burning, with the need for justice, Jake looked back at the massive ring world. The Council thought they had eliminated the human threat. Instead, they had just created something far worse: humans with a justified reason for war. Admiral Ryan Blake was reviewing morning reports at Earth Defense Command when the emergency transmission arrived. The message was brief, but it changed everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. Council betrayed us. They're coming for Earth. Prepare for war. Within minutes, every screen in the command center was displaying the same horrifying data. Long-range sensors confirmed what the message had warned. A massive alien fleet was moving toward the Sol system. The force was unlike anything humans had ever seen. Over 3,000 ships from a dozen different species, all united in their goal to destroy humanity. "Get me President Hayes," Blake ordered, his mind already shifting into combat mode. "And activate Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was humanity's worst-case scenario plan. For 30 years, while working to join the Council, human leaders had secretly prepared for the possibility that their trust might be betrayed. It was paranoia born from centuries of human history, where the greatest disasters often came from those who smiled while planning treachery. President Linda Hayes arrived at the command bunker within an hour. She was a former military officer herself, and she understood immediately what the approaching fleet meant for humanity. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Based on their current speed, the Council fleet will reach the outer system in 6 days, Blake replied. "But ma'am, there's something else. Our intelligence suggests this isn't just about Earth. They're planning to hit every human colony simultaneously. The full scope of the Council's plan was becoming clear. This wasn't a military action. It was genocide. Every human world, every outpost, every ship in space was marked for destruction. The Council intended to erase humanity from the galaxy entirely. President Hayes made the decision that would define humanity's future. Admiral, activate all defense protocols. Contact every colony, every ship, every human settlement in space. Tell them what's coming, and tell them to fight. She then turned to address the world. Within hours, every human on Earth and in the colonies received the same message. President Hayes stood before the cameras, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. My fellow humans, today we learned that the galaxy is not the peaceful place we hope to join. The Galactic Council, which we have worked for 30 years to impress, has revealed their true intentions. They do not see us as potential allies. They see us as a threat to be eliminated. The reaction across human space was immediate and profound. On Earth, people poured into the streets, not in panic, but in anger. Humanity had spent decades following alien rules, limiting their expansion, sharing their technology, all in the hope of proving they deserved a place among the stars. Now they learned it had all been a lie. The Council fleet is approaching our system with the intention of destroying not just Earth, but every human world, the President continued. They believe we are too dangerous to be allowed to exist. They think we are weak because we sought peace. They are about to learn how wrong they are. In the laboratories beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Sam Rodriguez was already at work. For 20 years, he had been developing weapons and defenses that officially didn't exist. Project Prometheus was humanity's insurance policy, technology, designed to protect them if their trust in alien goodwill ever proved misplaced. Mr. President, Rodriguez called on the secure line, Project Prometheus is ready for deployment. Every human world has been secretly equipped with defensive systems the Council doesn't know about. And our ships? Well, let's just say we haven't been entirely honest about our capabilities. The truth was that humanity had learned to think like humans, not like the cooperative species the Council expected them to be. While publicly sharing some technology, they had kept their most advanced developments secret. Every human colony had hidden weapons. Every civilian ship had military-grade shields and engines. Even the mining stations in the asteroid belt were more fortress than factory. How long until the defenses are fully active? Hayes asked. They already are, ma'am. Have been for years. We just haven't turned them on before. Across human space, the transformation began. On Mars, underground bunkers opened to reveal massive railguns that could punch holes through asteroid belts. The lunar bases activated shield generators that had been disguised as communication arrays. In the asteroid belt, mining platforms deployed weapon systems that had been hidden inside industrial equipment. But the most important change was in the humans themselves. For 30 years, they had tried to be the kind of species the Council wanted them to be. Peaceful, cooperative, predictable. Now, faced with extinction, they remembered what they really were. Commander Nick Sullivan received his orders at the edge of the system, where his ship Retribution had been patrolling what everyone thought was a routine sector. The Retribution wasn't really an exploration vessel, despite what its official records claimed. It was a warship, designed and built in secret shipyards that the Council had never been told about. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving activation codes from Earth Defense Command. All restrictions are lifted. We're authorized to use any and all weapons at our disposal. Sullivan smiled grimly. The Council was about to discover that humans were very good at keeping secrets. They were even better at war. Similar scenes were playing out across human space. Captain Maria Santos, commanding what appeared to be a civilian cargo hauler, received orders to activate her ship's true systems. Within minutes, the Merchant Prince transformed into a stealth destroyer, its cargo holds opening to reveal torpedo launchers and missile batteries. The Council had made a critical error in their assessment of humanity. They had observed humans for 30 years and concluded that they were a peaceful species that could be easily eliminated. They had seen human cooperation and mistaken it for weakness. They had watched human colonies and assumed they were defenseless. They had never bothered to learn the most important thing about humans. They were survivors, and survivors didn't trust anyone completely, not even species that claimed to be their friends. As the Council fleet approached the outer edge of the Sol system, confident in their overwhelming superiority, they were heading into a trap 30 years in the making. Humanity had spent 3 decades preparing for exactly this moment, while pretending to be something they were not. The Council thought they were attacking a peaceful species that would surrender quickly when faced with overwhelming force. Instead, they were about to encounter humanity's true nature, creative, adaptable, and absolutely ruthless when their survival was threatened. The war for humanity's existence was about to begin. The Council Armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system, expecting to find a defenseless collection of primitive worlds. What they found instead was the greatest military surprise in galactic history. Chancellor Vex Thul stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical displays with growing confusion. According to their intelligence, humanity possessed perhaps 50 military vessels and basic defensive systems around their major worlds. The sensors were showing something entirely different. Admiral Krell, he called to his military commander, a massive Grandi whose species had conquered dozens of worlds for the Council. Explain these readings. Admiral Krell studied the displays, his rock-like features showing the first signs of concern. Chancellor, I'm detecting over 2,000 contacts in the system. Most appear to be weapons platforms or automated defenses. This is unexpected. What the Council was seeing was the result of 30 years of human paranoia and preparation. Every asteroid in the belt had been hollowed out and turned into a fortress. Every moon around every planet bristled with hidden weapons. The space between the worlds was filled with mines, automated defense drones, and surprises that would have impressed military planners from any species. Commander Nick Sullivan watched the alien fleet from his position near Neptune, where his ship, Retribution, waited with a dozen other vessels that the Council's sensors couldn't detect. Human stealth technology was more advanced than anything the aliens had encountered. Sir, his tactical officer reported, the alien fleet is maintaining standard formation. They're approaching just like they would for any normal military operation. Sullivan almost felt sorry for them. The Council species had become so used to formal warfare, fleet against fleet with predetermined rules and predictable tactics, that they had forgotten how to fight an enemy that didn't follow the same rules. All ships, this is Sullivan. Begin Phase 1. Hit their supply vessels first, then their command ships. Make every shot count. The first human attacks came from directions the Council fleet wasn't even watching. Captain Maria Santos and her stealth destroyer Shadow Strike appeared behind the alien formation, launching missiles at their fuel tankers before disappearing back into the darkness. Similar attacks erupted throughout the fleet as human ships struck like ghosts, hitting critical targets before vanishing. What's happening? Chancellor Vex Thul demanded, as explosions blossomed throughout his fleet. Where are these attacks coming from? Admiral Krell was discovering that fighting humans was unlike anything in his military experience. They're not fighting us directly, Chancellor. They're using hit-and-run tactics, striking our weakest points and disappearing before we can respond. The Council had prepared for a conventional battle. They had overwhelming numbers and superior firepower. What they hadn't prepared for was an enemy that refused to fight conventionally. Humans had learned warfare from thousands of years of fighting each other, and they had never forgotten that the goal wasn't to fight with honor, it was to win. As the Council fleet tried to reform, they ran into the first line of real defenses. The asteroid belt erupted with weapons fire as hundreds of hidden bases opened up simultaneously. Railguns that could punch through any known armor sent projectiles racing toward the alien ships at incredible speeds. Those aren't civilian mining platforms, Admiral Krell realized too late. They're military installations. Everything we were told about human defensive capabilities was wrong. The aliens found themselves caught in a crossfire that came from every direction. Above them, the lunar bases opened fire with particle beams. Below them, Mars launched swarms of missiles. Around them, the asteroid fortresses poured death into their formations. But the most terrifying realization was that the humans were just getting started. Colonel Tony Mitchell sat in the command center of Ceres Base, watching the battle unfold. On his screens, Ceres was supposed to be humanity's largest mining operation in the asteroid belt. In reality, it was a military command center controlling thousands of automated weapons platforms. "Sir, Phase 2 is ready for deployment," his communications officer reported. "Launch everything," Mitchell ordered. Across the system, what the Council had assumed were cargo containers and industrial equipment suddenly revealed their true nature. Thousands of objects that had been floating innocently in space activated, transforming into attack drones, missile platforms, and electronic warfare systems. The humans had hidden an entire fleet in plain sight, disguised as civilian infrastructure. For 30 years, every peaceful human expansion had actually been military preparation. Every mining station, every research outpost, every seemingly harmless installation had been designed with one purpose: to protect humanity when the aliens finally showed their true intentions. Admiral Krell watched his displays in growing horror as the human trap continued to unfold. "They've turned their entire solar system into a weapon. This isn't a defense. It's an ambush." The Council's tactical doctrine, developed over millennia of fighting civilized wars, was useless against an enemy that had prepared for total war. The aliens had expected to face a few dozen human ships in open battle. Instead, they were fighting an entire star system that had been weaponized against them. Major Beth Thompson coordinated the electronic warfare assault from Earth's hidden command centers. Human computer specialists had been studying Council technology for decades, looking for weaknesses and backdoors. Now they put that knowledge to work, infiltrating alien ship systems and turning the Council's own technology against them. Their communication networks are too centralized, Thompson reported to Admiral Blake. "If we can disrupt their command structure, their formations will fall apart." The humans launched waves of cyber attacks that confused alien sensors and disrupted their coordination. Ships found themselves firing on their own allies. Formation leaders lost contact with their subordinates. The careful discipline that held the Council fleet together began to break down. But the most devastating weapon in humanity's arsenal wasn't technological. It was psychological. As the battle raged, human ships broadcast messages throughout the Council fleet. The messages contained the truth about what had happened at Nexus Prime, the recordings of Chancellor Vex Thul's orders, and proof of the Council's plans for genocide. Many of the alien crews had been told they were fighting a defensive war against human aggression. Learning that their own leaders had planned an unprovoked massacre caused confusion and doubt throughout the fleet. Some ships began to withdraw, others stopped fighting entirely. The Council had expected to face weak, frightened humans who would surrender when faced with overwhelming force. Instead, they were fighting an enemy that had spent 30 years preparing for exactly this moment. An enemy that fought with the fury of the betrayed and the skill of natural predators. As the first day of battle ended, Admiral Krell delivered his report to Chancellor Vex Thul. "Sir, we've lost over 400 ships. The humans have lost perhaps 20. Their defenses are stronger than anything in our intelligence reports, and their tactics are unprecedented." The Chancellor stared at the tactical displays, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. "How is this possible? Our observers have been watching them for 30 years. "I think, sir, that they've been watching us, too. And they've been preparing. The siege of Sol was not going as planned." Dr. Sam Rodriguez stood in the hidden command center beneath Colorado's mountains, watching as humanity's greatest secret was finally revealed to the galaxy. For 20 years, he had been the director of Project Prometheus, a program that officially didn't exist and had consumed more resources than any other human endeavor in history. "Mr. President," he said to Linda Hayes over the secure communication link, "it's time to show them what we've really been building out here." The Council fleet had been fighting what they thought was humanity's full military strength for 3 days. They had lost over 1,000 ships to human defenses that seemed to appear from nowhere. But they still believed they were facing the desperate last stand of a cornered species. They had no idea they had only been fighting a fraction of humanity's true capabilities. "Admiral Blake," Rodriguez continued, "begin Phase 3 activation. All colonies, all hidden installations, everything we've built. It's time to take the gloves off." Across human space, the transformation began. What the Council had observed as peaceful expansion and scientific research for 30 years suddenly revealed its true nature. Every human colony, every outpost, every seemingly innocent research station had been designed as part of a vast military network. On Europa, the ice mining facilities opened massive hangar doors to reveal shipyards that had been operating in secret for decades. The Scientific Research Station on Titan launched its first squadron of fighters, aircraft that had been built from designs the Council had never seen. Even the agricultural domes on Mars split open to deploy defensive systems that could protect the entire planet. Colonel Tony Mitchell watched from Ceres as the asteroid belt completed its transformation. What had appeared to be the largest mining operation in human history was actually the most extensive military fortification ever constructed. Thousands of asteroids that had been mined over the years had actually been converted into weapons platforms, supply depots, and command centers. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "all installations are reporting ready status. The belt is fully operational." Mitchell smiled grimly. The Council had been watching human expansion into the asteroid belt for 3 decades, never realizing they were observing the construction of a fortress that could control the entire inner solar system. But the real surprise was coming from the outer colonies. Major Beth Thompson coordinated the revelation from Earth as reports flooded in from human settlements that the Council thought they knew everything about. "Admiral, We're receiving confirmation from Alpha Centauri, Wolf 359, and Proxima stations. All defensive systems are active and reporting fleet contacts approaching their positions. The Council had planned to attack every human colony simultaneously, believing they could easily overwhelm the scattered, lightly defended settlements. What they found instead was that humanity had been building military installations disguised as civilian colonies for 30 years. The agricultural colony at Alpha Centauri revealed massive orbital defense platforms that had been hidden inside what appeared to be farming stations. The research outpost at Wolf 359 deployed a fleet of warships that had been constructed in underground shipyards. Even the small mining operation at Proxima launched enough missiles to destroy a battle group. Admiral Krell studied the tactical, reports with growing desperation. "Chancellor, we're not fighting scattered colonies. Every human settlement is a military base. They've been lying to us about everything." Chancellor Vexthul stared at the displays showing human military strength across dozens of star systems. "How many ships do they have?" "Sir, our estimates keep changing. Every time we think we've identified their full strength, more platforms come online. Current count is over 5,000 military vessels and at least 10,000 defensive installations." Truth was even worse than Krell realized. Humanity had been playing a deception game on a galactic scale. While publicly sharing their civilian technology and following Council restrictions on military development, they had been secretly building the most extensive defense network in known space. Captain Danny Foster commanded the human response from the hidden base at Vesta. His official title was Director of Asteroid Mining Operations. His real job was coordinating the deployment of humanity's secret weapons. "All right, people," Foster announced to his team. "The Council wanted to see what humans are really capable of. Let's show them." The asteroid belt came alive with activity as Foster's network activated. Thousands of mining platforms revealed their true nature as weapons emplacements. Cargo haulers opened to deploy swarms of attack drones. Even the space suits worn by human workers transformed into powered armor as miners became soldiers. But the most devastating revelation was the discovery of humanity's true industrial capacity. The Council had been monitoring human production for 3 decades, believing they understood the limits of human manufacturing. They had never realized that humanity had been operating entire industries in secret. Dr. Rodriguez authorized the activation of the hidden shipyards scattered throughout the outer system. Facilities that had been disguised as research stations or mining operations revealed themselves as massive production centers. Ships that had been under construction for years in secret launched to join the battle. "Mr. President," Rodriguez reported, "all hidden assets are now active. The Council is facing the full strength of human civilization for the first time. The psychological impact on the Council forces was devastating. They had been told they were fighting a primitive species that could be easily conquered. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that had been preparing for this exact war for 30 years. An enemy that had built an entire hidden civilization dedicated to military defense." Lieutenant Commander Amy Parker led the first human counteroffensive from the secret base on Io. Her ships, disguised as scientific research vessels for decades, dropped their camouflage and began hunting Council supply lines. "Target their logistics," Parker ordered her squadron. "Every fuel depot, every supply ship, every repair facility. We're going to strand them in our system." The humans had learned something that the Council had forgotten during their long peace. Modern warfare was won by logistics as much as firepower. By attacking the alien supply lines, Human forces could neutralize the Council's numerical advantage, but perhaps the most important weapon humanity revealed was their adaptability. The Council species had become comfortable with formal warfare, conducted according to established rules. Humans had never forgotten that war was about survival, not honor. Human commanders like Captain Morrison, who had escaped from Nexus Prime, brought vital intelligence about Council tactics and weaknesses. They used this knowledge to develop new strategies that the aliens couldn't predict or counter. "They fight like it's a game," Morrison reported during a strategy session. "They have rules, formations, and protocols for everything. But they don't know how to adapt when someone breaks the rules." Admiral Blake coordinated the human response from Earth's command center, watching as 30 years of secret preparation finally paid off. "All commands. This is Blake. The Council wanted a war. Let's give them one they'll never forget." As the 5th day of battle began, the true scope of humanity's deception became clear. The Council wasn't fighting a desperate last stand by a primitive species. They were facing the full military might of a civilization that had spent 3 decades preparing for exactly this moment. The humans had been pretending to be weak while secretly becoming the most militarized species in the galaxy. Now, with their survival at stake and their trust betrayed, they were about to show the Council what humans were really capable of when they stopped pretending to be civilized. With Earth's defenses holding against the Council's siege, Admiral Ryan Blake made a decision that would change the nature of the war. Humanity had spent a week proving they could defend themselves. Now it was time to prove they could do much more than that. "All fleet commanders," Blake announced over the secure communication network. "This is Admiral Blake. Operation Payback is authorized. Take the war to them." The human counteroffensive began with the activation of assets the Council didn't even know existed. For 30 years, while publicly following Council restrictions on military expansion, humanity had been secretly building jump gates throughout their territory. These gates, disguised as scientific research stations, could transport human fleets directly to Council space. Captain Danny Foster led the first strike force through the hidden gate near Pluto. His destination was Zephyrian Prime, Chancellor, Vex Thul's homeworld and the political center of the Council. The irony wasn't lost on him. They were bringing the war directly to the doorstep of the species that had started it. "Jump gate activation in 30 seconds, Foster's navigator reported. "Target coordinates confirmed. Zephyrian system, outer perimeter." The human ships that emerged in Council space were nothing like what the aliens expected. These weren't the desperate defenders they had been fighting in the Sol system. These were purpose-built warships designed specifically for attacking Council territory. Foster's flagship, the Vengeance, looked like no ship the Council had ever encountered. Its hull was covered in stealth plating that made it nearly invisible to alien sensors. Its weapons were designed not just to destroy enemy ships, but to cause maximum psychological impact on anyone watching. "Sir, we're detecting multiple Council patrol vessels," the tactical officer reported. "Standard formation. No indication they've spotted us yet." "They've gotten comfortable," Foster observed. 30 years of peace in their own territory. They've forgotten what it feels like to be attacked at home. The human attack wasn't just military. It was psychological warfare designed to break the Council's will to fight. Foster's ships didn't simply destroy the patrol vessels. They disabled them, broadcasting recordings of Chancellor Vex Thul's orders for human genocide to the crews before leaving them stranded in space. Similar operations were taking place throughout Council territory. Lieutenant Commander Amy Parker led raids against Krillian supply bases. the same species whose shock troops had massacred the human delegation at Nexus Prime. Captain Nick Sullivan struck at Grandi military academies, where council officers learned the formal tactics that humans were tearing apart. But the most devastating attacks were those led by Captain Jake Morrison. Having survived the betrayal at Nexus Prime, Morrison had volunteered to lead the mission against the Council's most sensitive targets, their civilian populations. "I want them to understand what they tried to do to us," Morrison told his crew, as their ships approached a major Council trading hub. "They plan to murder every human man, woman, and child in the galaxy. It's time they learned what that fear feels like." Morrison's ships didn't attack civilian targets directly. Instead, they demonstrated humanity's ability to strike anywhere in Council space at any time. They appeared in systems that had never seen war, broadcast the truth about the Council's genocide plans, and disappeared before local defenses could respond. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. For 30 years, Council civilians had lived in the security of knowing their military was dominant throughout the galaxy. Now they learned that humans could appear in their skies whenever they chose, and there was nothing the Council military could do to stop them. Dr. Rodriguez coordinated the broader strategy from his command center on Earth. The human attacks weren't random. They were carefully planned to exploit weaknesses in Council society that human intelligence had identified over decades of observation. "Target their communication networks," Rodriguez ordered his cyber warfare teams. "I want every Council citizen to see the truth about what their leaders planned for humanity." Human hackers, trained for decades on Council technology, infiltrated alien networks and began broadcasting the recordings from Nexus Prime. Citizens across Council space watched their own chancellor ordering the genocide of an entire species. The revelation shattered the moral authority that held the Council together. On Altarian Prime, Ambassador Keltar received reports of human attacks throughout Council space with growing alarm. Unlike many Council species, the Altarians had actually liked humans and opposed the genocide plan from the beginning. "This is madness," Keltar told his government. "Chancellor Vexthul has started a war we cannot win. The humans are not the primitive species we thought they were." Similar conversations were taking place on dozens of Council worlds. Many species had supported the attack on humanity only because they believed it would be quick and easy. Now they were learning that humans were capable of bringing the war directly to Council territory. The human strategy was working. The Council was discovering that fighting a defensive war in their own space was very different from attacking what they thought was a helpless enemy. Human forces struck without warning, achieved their objectives, and vanished before Council reinforcements could arrive. Major Beth Thompson coordinated intelligence operations from Earth, analyzing Council communications for signs of political breakdown. The reports were encouraging. "Admiral, we're detecting significant dissent within the Council," Thompson reported to Blake. "At least 6 species are demanding an immediate ceasefire. The Altarians have withdrawn their forces entirely, and the Draxi are threatening to do the same." Blake studied the tactical displays showing human operations across a dozen star systems. The counteroffensive was succeeding beyond their most optimistic projections. Not only were they winning military victories, they were breaking apart the political alliance that had made the Council's attack possible. "What's the status of the main Council fleet in our system?" Blake asked. "Still fighting, sir, but their effectiveness is declining. They're receiving reports of attacks throughout their territory, and many commanders are requesting permission to return home to defend their own worlds." Chancellor Vexthul faced the collapse of everything he had worked to build. The Council's unity was fracturing as species after species questioned the wisdom of fighting humanity. His own military commanders were reporting that human tactics were unlike anything they had trained to face. "Admiral Krell," the Chancellor demanded, "how are these humans everywhere at once? Our intelligence said they had perhaps 50 ships. Sir, our intelligence was wrong about everything. The humans have been deceiving us for 30 years. They have fleets we never knew existed, weapons we never detected, and capabilities we never imagined." The truth was that humanity had been playing a game the Council didn't even know existed. While publicly cooperating and following alien rules, they had been secretly preparing for the day when those rules would be used against them. Captain Morrison's voice echoed across Council space as human ships broadcast his message to every alien world. "You wanted to see what humans are capable of when threatened. You planned to genocide our species because you thought we were dangerous. You were right to be afraid, but your fear made you do something unforgivable. Now, you're going to learn what human justice looks like." The Council had started a war expecting an easy victory against a primitive species. Instead, they had awakened something that many of them were beginning to realize they should have left alone. Humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for revenge. And they were very good at it. Chancellor Vexthul stood in his private chambers aboard the flagship, staring at reports that described the complete collapse of everything he had spent his life building. The Council's unity was fracturing. Their military was being systematically destroyed, and human forces were operating freely throughout territory that had been secure for millennia. But Vexthul had one final option, one that violated every principle the Council claimed to uphold. In the deepest vaults of Nexus Prime, the Council maintained weapons from the ancient wars that had nearly destroyed the galaxy before the current peace was established. Planet killers, devices capable of sterilizing entire worlds. "Admiral Krell," the Chancellor called to his military commander, "activate the Omega Protocol. It's time to use the old weapons." Krell's massive Grandi form seemed to shrink at the suggestion. "Chancellor, those weapons are forbidden. The Galactic Accords specifically prohibit their use. If we deploy planet killers, we become no better than the ancient tyrants we replaced." "The humans have left us no choice," Vexthul replied, his voice cold with desperation. "They cannot be allowed to survive. Their very existence threatens the order we have maintained for thousands of years." The Chancellor's decision revealed the final truth about the Council's nature. Beneath their claims of civilized governance and peaceful cooperation lay the same brutal calculus that had always driven galactic politics. The strong would do whatever necessary to maintain their power, regardless of the cost. News of the Chancellor's order spread quickly through the Council fleet. Many officers, already demoralized by their losses to human forces, were horrified by the prospect of using weapons of mass genocide. The Altarian contingent immediately withdrew from the war entirely, declaring that they would not participate. In the destruction of entire worlds, Ambassador Keltar broadcast a message throughout Altarian space. "The Chancellor has revealed his true nature. This is not a defensive war. It is an attempt at genocide using the most terrible weapons in galactic history. Altaria will not be party to such evil." Similar declarations came from other Council species. The Draxi recalled their fleets. The Epsilon Collective declared neutrality. Even some Zephyrian commanders began questioning orders that violated every principle their civilization claimed to value. But on Earth, human intelligence intercepted communications about the planet killer. Deployment. The news reached Admiral Blake just as reports arrived of massive council ships moving toward human colonies throughout the galaxy. "Mr. President," Blake reported to Linda Hayes, "the Council is deploying prohibited weapons, planet killers, capable of sterilizing entire worlds. They're targeting Earth, Mars, and every major human colony." President Hayes felt the weight of the moment. The Council's desperation had driven them to consider the complete annihilation of humanity, but she also knew that Dr. Rodriguez and his teams had been preparing for exactly this possibility. "Sam," she called to Rodriguez over the secure line, "they're bringing out the ancient weapons. Please tell me you have something for this." Dr. Rodriguez had spent 20 years studying every aspect of Council technology, including the forbidden weapons locked away in their deepest vaults. "Ma'am? We've been tracking those weapons for a decade. We know where they are, how they work, and most importantly, how to stop them." The human response was swift and decisive. Captain Morrison, whose survival of the Nexus Prime massacre had made him a symbol of human resistance, led a strike force directly toward the Council's secret weapons facilities. "All ships, this is Morrison. We're going after the planet killers. The Council wants to commit genocide. We're going to make sure they can't." Morrison's mission was the most dangerous human operation of the war. The weapons facilities were located in the most heavily defended systems in Council space, protected by technology that was thousands of years old and had never been successfully attacked. But humans had advantages that the ancient designers of these facilities had never anticipated. Their ships could operate undetected using stealth technology the Council couldn't match. Their tactical flexibility allowed them to exploit weaknesses that formal Council tactics could never find. Meanwhile, General Marcus Bell coordinated the evacuation of civilian populations from human worlds that might be targeted. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. While the Council prepared to use weapons that would kill billions, humanity was working to save every life they could. "We're not going to become monsters just because they have," Bell announced to his staff. "Every human life matters. Every human life will be protected." But the most important battle was being fought in the realm of public opinion. Major Thompson's information warfare teams broadcast evidence of the Council's planned use of planet killers throughout alien space. The revelation that their leaders were prepared to commit genocide on a galactic scale shattered what remained of Council unity. Riots broke out on Council worlds as citizens learned their government was preparing to use weapons that could destroy entire civilizations. Military units began refusing orders. Planetary governments declared independence from the Council authority. Captain Danny Foster led one of the most critical missions of the war, the assault on the primary planet killer storage facility. The ancient weapons were kept in a system so secret that most Council members didn't know it existed. "Sir, we're approaching the target," Foster's navigator reported. "Sensors are detecting massive energy signatures. Those weapons are definitely here." The battle for the planet killer facility was unlike anything in galactic military history. The humans weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting to prevent the annihilation of their entire species. Every human in the strike force knew that failure meant the death of everyone they had ever loved, but they also fought with the knowledge that they had already achieved something remarkable. They had exposed the Council's true nature to the galaxy. They had proven that the supposed champions of galactic peace were willing to commit genocide when their power was threatened. "Target the weapon storage bays," Foster ordered as his ships closed with the facility. "I want those planet killers completely destroyed. No one should have the power to murder entire worlds." As the human ships tore through the facility's defenses, Chancellor Vex Thul watched his final option slip away. The weapons that represented thousands of years of Council dominance were being destroyed by the very species he had tried to eliminate. "Sir," Admiral Krell reported, "the humans have reached the primary storage facility. They're destroying the planet killers." Vexthul stared at the tactical displays, realizing that his gamble had failed completely. Not only had he failed to destroy humanity, he had revealed the Council's willingness to use weapons of mass destruction. The moral authority that had held the Council together for millennia was gone forever. "Chancellor," came a communication from the Altarian government, "the Altarian Republic formally demands your immediate surrender and trial for war crimes. Your actions have violated every principle of galactic law." Similar messages arrived from dozens of other species. The Council was no longer united behind Vex Thul's war. Instead, they were united in their horror at what he had tried to do. As human forces completed the destruction of the planet killer facilities, Captain Morrison sent a message throughout the galaxy. "The weapons that could have destroyed entire worlds are gone forever. Humanity has made sure that no species will ever again face the threat of complete annihilation. The Council's reign of terror is over." The desperate gambit had backfired completely. Instead of saving the Council, the attempt to use planet killers had destroyed whatever legitimacy they had left. Humanity had not only survived the ultimate threat, they had protected the entire galaxy from weapons that should never have existed in the first place. Admiral Ryan Blake stood on the bridge of his flagship as it approached Nexus Prime for the second time in human history. But this time, humanity wasn't coming as hopeful supplicants seeking acceptance. They were coming as conquerors, with a fleet that represented the full might of a species that had been pushed beyond its breaking point. The massive ring world that had once been the symbol of galactic unity now lay broken and defenseless. Half the Council species had withdrawn from the war entirely, disgusted by Chancellor Vex Thul's willingness to use planet killers. The remainder had surrendered rather than face the complete destruction of their military forces. "Sir," Blake's communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the Council chambers. Chancellor Vex Thul is requesting terms for surrender." Blake's expression was cold as he considered the request. 30 years ago, humanity had come to this place in peace, seeking to join what they believed was a community of civilized species. They had been betrayed, attacked, and marked for genocide. Now the species responsible was begging for mercy. "Tell the Chancellor that humanity will accept nothing less than his personal surrender," Blake replied. "He will answer for his crimes." Throughout human space, the transformation was complete. The species that had once tried so hard to prove they were peaceful and civilized had revealed their true nature. They were survivors, warriors, and when necessary, conquerors. The galaxy would never again mistake human cooperation for weakness. President Linda Hayes addressed the human worlds from Earth, her words broadcast to every colony and outpost humanity had established. "Today, we have proven that humanity cannot be destroyed by those who fear what we might become. We have shown the galaxy that betrayal and attempted genocide will not be tolerated. The age of Council dominance is over." On Nexus Prime, Chancellor Vex Thul sat in his chambers, watching the approach of human ships that had once seemed so primitive and harmless. His attempt to eliminate humanity before they could become a threat had created exactly the outcome he had feared most. Humans with both the power and the justification to reshape the galaxy according to their own vision. Captain Jake Morrison, the survivor of the original massacre, led the boarding party that entered the council chambers. The irony was perfect. The man who had barely escaped Vexthul's trap was now returning to arrest the alien leader who had ordered his death. "Chancellor Vexthul," Morrison announced as human marines secured the chamber, "by the authority of the human colonial government, you are under arrest for war crimes, attempted genocide, and crimes against galactic peace." The ancient Zephyrian leader looked up at Morrison with eyes that held no trace of the arrogance he had once displayed. "You have won, Captain. But do you understand what you have unleashed? Humanity was dangerous before. What will you become now that you know the galaxy fears you?" Morrison's smile was cold as winter. "We'll become whatever we need to be to make sure this never happens again." The trials that followed would reshape galactic civilization. Evidence of the Council's genocide plans, their willingness to use planet killers, and their systematic deception of humanity was presented to representatives from every species in known space. The moral authority that had allowed the Council to rule for millennia was destroyed forever. Dr. Sam Rodriguez led the investigation into Council technology and weapons, ensuring that humanity would never again be caught unprepared. The secret, military networks that had saved humanity would be expanded and improved. Never again would humans trust their security to alien goodwill. "We learned something important," Rodriguez reported to President Hayes. "The galaxy isn't the peaceful place we hoped it was. It's full of species that will smile at you while planning your destruction. Humanity needs to be strong enough to protect not just ourselves, but anyone else who might face the same betrayal we did." Admiral Blake established human military bases throughout former Council territory, ensuring that the lessons of this war would not be forgotten. Human ships now patrolled space lanes that had been controlled by aliens for thousands of years. The species that had once been restricted to their own solar system now dominated a significant portion of the galaxy. But perhaps the most important change was in humanity itself. Captain Morrison, now promoted to Admiral, reflected on how far they had come since that day at Nexus Prime when everything changed. "We came here seeking friends," Morrison told his staff as he established the new Human Command Center on Nexus Prime. "We found enemies, but we also found out who we really are when everything is on the line. The transformation wasn't without cost. Humanity had lost its innocence about the galaxy and its place in it. They had learned that cooperation and trust were luxuries that could be fatal when dealing with species that viewed them as threats to be eliminated." Lieutenant Commander Amy Parker, now Captain Parker, established patrol routes that would ensure no alien fleet could ever again approach human space undetected. The network of sensors, weapons platforms, and rapid response forces that protected humanity was now the most sophisticated military system in galactic history. "We're not the same species that left Earth 50 years ago," Parker observed. "We're harder, more suspicious, and a lot more dangerous. I just hope we remember why we had to become this way." President Hayes announced humanity's new doctrine to the galaxy. "We sought peace, and you gave us war. We offered friendship, and you planned genocide. We will not make these mistakes again. Humanity will be strong enough to protect ourselves and our allies. We will be watchful enough to detect threats before they can act. And we will be ruthless enough to eliminate any species that attempts what the Council tried to do." The galaxy had a new dominant power, one that had been forged in betrayal and tempered by the fire of near extinction. The Council's attempt to eliminate humanity before they could become a threat had instead created the very thing they feared most: humans with both the power and the bitter experience necessary to impose their will on galactic civilization, as Admiral Morrison looked out over Nexus Prime from what had once been Chancellor Vexthul's office. He reflected on the journey that had brought humanity to this point. They had started as hopeful explorers seeking their place among the stars. They had become the galaxy's new rulers, shaped by betrayal into something harder and more dangerous than they had ever intended to be. The Council had been right about one thing. Humanity was dangerous. But their attempt to eliminate that danger had only made it worse. Now the galaxy would live under human protection, human rules, and human justice. The age of human dominance had begun, born from the ashes of the Council's betrayal and the rage of a species that had learned never to trust again. The galaxy had wanted to see what humans were capable of when threatened with extinction. Now they knew.